Tuesday, September 6, 2016, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So this morning, I like to talk more about society and what I see going forward. Following markets and the monetary system these days and geopolitics can be very negative, I would say. You read and I've talked about it too. People calling for crashes. All the currencies collapsing and gold and silver exploding. I'm still positive on gold and silver, but I don't try to make these predictions of gold exploding because they've been made for the last 10, 15 years. Gold has gone up, but exploded it hasn't, the price. But apart from that, though, I like to focus on the contrarian part of, the view that I give, because I think there's a lot of people out there who sometimes mistake what I say for being, negative and like a fearmonger. But actually, I'm positive. I actually think humanity has a lot going for it because nowadays with technology, we are able to learn a lot more about how things work and how we've been, as human beings, hoodwinked into a system that basically tells you that you need someone to look after you, because that's what having a leader or a prime minister or a queen or a king or a president, that's what it is. They're basically saying, you need to work, make money and give your money to these people so that they can look after you because they know better. And I think that's ending. It's not going to end next week, next month, or in a year's time. I think it will take generations to change because we've been under this system, a pyramid system, basically, where the top, rule, the bottom. It's a bit like that movie, A Bug's Life. I remember taking my daughter to watch that when she was younger. And it's funny because a lot of these kids' movies, they have messages for the adults. And in The Bug's Life, it's about the colony of ants that are terrorized and told what to do by the grasshoppers. And one day, the ants realize, we're more numerous and we don't need the grasshoppers to boss us around. So it's a little bit like that, I think. And I think one of the reasons why humanity has been under the thumb, of these people, whoever they are. I have a lot of viewers who say, "Oh, it's the Masons, the Freemasons." Sometimes I talk about the Vatican. Yeah, maybe it is a lot of these people. It's their philosophy, but I think once the public perception changes, once people learn about this, all these ideas, disappear. And the people behind them, they might not disappear, but they'll, they'll have to adjust. That's my opinion. Brexit, in my opinion, is a very small step towards that because the British people, voted basically and said, we don't want another layer of government coming from, a foreign country because, Brussels is a foreign country to the UK. My hope is that in the future, people within the UK will also say, we don't need, a mayor of London. We don't need the parliament in Westminster to tell us what to do. We can have our own, each individual is their own governor, so to speak. And I met Jeff Berwick in London earlier this year before Brexit. I think it was sometime in early June, late May, and we did an interview together, and he was talking about the perfect government, world government, would be 7 billion, governments, i.e. each individual as a sovereign, and I agree with him. And why do I think the future is bright for humanity? Well, I think the internet and these YouTube videos that I do is a small part of it. And I remember when I started looking into gold, small government. I read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged in the late 90s. I started looking into the Austrian School of Economics. And at the time, I was still working in the city, and I, I didn't even talk to my colleagues about it because it's so far, out of the consciousness of anyone that if you talk to people about that, they would even think, what are you talking about? But a few years later, a few people started looking into it, like my colleagues. I had two or three or four that, actually thought what I said was interesting. And now, I can see, through how many, viewers I'm getting. I know I don't have too many subscribers, only about just under 2,500, but I've only been doing this since November. And I get viewers from all over the world, even though the majority are from the US, UK, Australia, and Canada, but it's a start. And what I'm trying to say is that with technology and the way that ideas now can be, disseminated and also broadcast to anyone, anywhere, I think humans, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. If you go back a few thousand years, very few, only the people who were the leaders, the priesthood or, the royalty or whatever, they were the ones who knew, who had knowledge. The greater public were ignorant and uneducated. Even, up until recently, like a lot of, until the 19th century, people literacy was very low. So I think, yeah, education is an important thing, and I don't mean people going to state schools or public schools and being brainwashed. What I mean is learning things, and self-learning. Even Abraham Lincoln, he was self-taught. He didn't go to school. I'm not saying he was a. I'm not talking about him as a president. Just an an example. So yes, I think we've had, especially the last 100 years. I think in terms of human development, it's been a good last 100 years. We've had technology, we're healthier, we live longer, the quality of life is better, but there's still a lot of people on Earth who are very poor, and there's still a huge discrepancy. They're being kept down, and I would say that a lot of people would say, oh, but we've had this progress because of government. I would actually ask the question, couldn't it have been better? We've made progress maybe in spite of government. Look what government has done in the last 100 years, killed millions and millions of people through World War I, World War II, genocide. It wasn't individuals who did those things. It was people in government saying, oh, we have to go fight these people because they're bad. We have to go fight for your country, fight for king and country, fight for, Christianity, fight for Islam, fight for all these isms, But, I've traveled around the world. I've lived in different places, and I can honestly say people everywhere are basically the same. The only difference is the language and some of the customs. But deep down, people just want to have a peaceful life with their family and be self-sufficient. So what I'm trying to say here, I think we're entering an era of small, hopefully no government. or just like Jeff Berwick says, 7 billion governors out there, people being self-reliant. And also, I'm not saying you're going to live in isolation, but you're going to, yeah, you do business with each other. Nothing's going to change. It's just that you're not going to have, someone that thinks they're better than you telling you what to do. But you're going to cooperate with people. You're going to respect them. And yes, and the world will be a better place. And I think there's a potential for that. We've never had as much potential to become freer and a better world, in my opinion. And actually, all the stuff we talk about, currency reset, hyperinflation, insurmountable fiat money debt, all these things, in my opinion, are a symptom that the old system where we have the pyramid on top, the few people in charge, and then the masses dependent on them. In my opinion, that's a symptom. All these problems we have nowadays is a symptom that we are at the end of this thousands of year old system. And yes, there are all these groups behind it, that we talk about. But as Jeff Berwick again says, and I bring him up, government, the word means to govern, means mind. It's just people in charge of your mind. So if you don't want government, just ignore it. If you don't want to be brainwashed, don't watch the mainstream media. Don't read their papers. Sometimes you do come across it, but don't make it a necessity. The other day I was, I forgot what I was, but they had a television somewhere, in the public places, airports and stuff. And all they have is the news, and they got BBC or Sky. And I just turned around and, try to put my back to it because I don't want to watch that stuff. So yeah, it's all dependent on the individual. And yes, things are not great right now, and people are saying, oh, we're going to get a new world order, they're going to take over, we're going to have a horrible world. But actually, I don't think so. I think humanity is going to, we always surprise ourselves, and we're going to do better. But it's not going to be next year or in 5 years. But we'll start to see the small baby steps, in my opinion. So it's going to be like Bug's life. The ants are going to overthrow the grasshoppers. And that's, we are 7 billion people. They are only a few thousand people, that rule the world, maybe even less. So there's nothing that can stop, a good idea. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. The future of humanity sounds a bit philosophical, but I talk about geopolitics, so this is kind of geopolitics. It's more geopolitics of the 7 billion governors of the world. So if you like my videos, please like, share it, and subscribe. We also accept donations. Bitcoin is our favorite, actually, kind of donation. And I thank all the people who have been sending Bitcoins. We still accept fiat money. They're still worth something at the moment. So we've got links below to the Bitcoin address in the description, and PayPal and Patreon. Thanks for watching. Bye.